Good
There you
morning.
go.
Hi there. How you doing? Sorry, I was trying to figure it out.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, thank you so much for being here this morning. And welcome to the Berkeley Democratic Club board interview process. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. I'm sure your schedule is quite busy, so we'll get right into it. But first, we'll give you a brief overview about how our process works. We'll interview you here, and the board will make their recommendations to the membership at the forum on September 19th. The board will announce their recommendation and it will show up as an asterisk on the voting ballot. This does not mean that you have the entire club endorsement, but just the board recommendation. And then the entire membership of over 200 people will still vote after you present at the forum. We won't allow proxy votes or representatives, but we will keep the voting open until Sunday evening after the meeting on Thursday. Members of the club will receive an emailed ballot, and the forum and this interview will be recorded for those who are unable to attend. And finally, because we know recall elections often involve serious concerns beyond simple policy disagreements, our job as a club is to try to allow you to delve into these issues to inform voters. You'll have about 2 to 3 minutes to answer the questions unless otherwise noted. So we will start with Diego, and once again, welcome and thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Hello, good morning. Madam District Attorney Price, please explain why you believe voters should reject the recall measure.
And I have 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, 2 and then 3 if you need it.
Okay, hang on just a minute. So I know that my campaign submitted to you all the statement of the Alameda County Democratic Party and that you are a chartered club of our Alameda County Democratic Party. So good morning, Alameda County Democrats. I'm a member of the Alameda County Democratic Party, an elected member representing 8018. And so I just want to emphasize to you what the party has said. It's basically that this voters should reject. The party has a simple message to voters to reject the recall because it's undemocratic. That I was elected and through a democratic process by a majority of the voters of Alameda County. That I took office in January of 2023, and within weeks, if not days, people began this recall. That it's a very different kind of process than the democratic election process that we normally have. And so it's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's an undue burden on an understaffed county registrar's office where we already, and they've taken on that burden. It's going to cost us an extra $4 million, and it's a distraction to the work that needs to be done to emphasize the administration of justice. We should be focusing on finding common ground to make our community safer together. And we should not be trying to tear down government. And certainly as Democrats, we should not be on the same page as the Republicans who have spent, the last 4 years trying to overturn our democratic institutions and undermine our government. And so, our election was a historic win for the voters of Alameda County. It's the first time we've had an elected district attorney since 1938, and we won't go back. Our theme of Democrats across the country is that we won't go back, and we certainly should not go back in Alameda County to a day when the Board of Supervisors appoints the district attorney. So, thank you.
Thank you. So, one element that's come up during these conversations is your office has resentenced or recommend resentencing for individuals with serious criminal offenses. Can you explain how you determine which cases move forward for resentencing? Is there a specific methodology, such as the age of the crime, its severity, or advocacy from family members? We're curious about the methodology for resentencing.
Sure. Under California law, which went into effect, I believe, in 2022, all district attorneys well, there's a process for resentencing that the district attorney's office is part of. In Alameda County, we have the unfavorable distinction of being under the jurisdiction of the federal court. And so Judge Vincent Chambria, upon the discovery of documents indicating that our office had a policy and a practice for about 30 years of excluding Black jurors, particularly Black females and Jewish residents, from serving on death penalty juries, that the federal court directed me as the current district attorney, who inherited this office and this practice, which apparently was quite prevalent, that we were directed to review all of the death penalty cases where a person is still alive on death row. And so we started that process several months ago. The cases have been prioritized, the ones that are before Judge Chambria. He had all of the death penalty cases reassigned to him, I think, except for 2. And so those cases have been going through a process. We have a team of lawyers, inspector assigned, as well as advocates, and they go through the files to determine what evidence, if any, is there of unconstitutional conduct. It's focused primarily on the lawyers whom we know by their own admissions, and certainly by the documents that we have, that they were the most, I guess, the worst violators. And we know who they were. There's 5 or 6 lawyers who were leading the prosecution of death penalty cases in this county for several decades, and we know who they were. And so we have their information, and anytime one of their cases pops up, that is a red flag. And there's a process that we're participating in, that those cases have already been identified for us by the court. We also have, some of them are in federal court, some of them are in state court. The defense bar is well aware of which cases they are. I mean, everybody knows who's on death row. For our office as well, because we know who the lawyers were, and we have really some very compelling evidence of their unconstitutional, unethical, illegal behavior. Any case that lawyer was involved in, we now have a duty to look at. We also have, since, in addition to that, we have what we call the Tran cases, where Officer Fong Tran of the Oakland Police Department was found to have been bribing witnesses, failing to disclose evidence, hiding evidence. And so those cases have become a priority for us as well, that we now have to have a team of lawyers as well as paralegals looking at all of those cases and putting them in a category. There's about 250 of those cases. And then otherwise, the general resentencing cases are defined by statute. The categories were made, are in the statute. So anyone who's on death row, those were the first people that had that. I see she's saying time, but it's either determined by the court or by statute is the short answer, but that's what we're doing.
I appreciate that. So it's just so I'm clear, it's sort of a judge order. It sounds like the first priority, and then the case of the officer that you mentioned, and then it's then the methodology is by statute. Is that what you? Okay.
Yeah. The statute expanded. The statute is started off as Penal Code Section 1170D, and it's had like 4 or 5 iterations of it. And so within the statute, it defines who is eligible by year, as each year comes.
I see.
As there was 2022, 23, 24, there'll be 2 more people eligible in 25. So that's how it is.
Okay.
One thing that we've looked at are women. We did focus on, I recall we focused on women. I know I'm over time. But we focused on women, and we have not, women, and we have mandatory, we have youth who were sentenced to sentences that now violate California law. Those are coming back as well.
So youth and women and death penalty cases are those. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I believe the next question is Eric.
Uh, Good morning, Madam District Attorney. My question, you'll have, again, 2 minutes for this question. The San Francisco Chronicle has reported that your office has not released data about charging in cases. How will your office speed up this legally necessary transparency on how many people are arrested, charged with crimes, or diverted to rehabilitative or treatment programs?
We have entered into a partnership with a number of academic institutions that work on transparency dashboards and data. And let's be clear, will be, once we get our transparency dashboard up, we will be only the second district attorney's office in the state of California that has one. Santa Clara County has one, and it took them 2 years to get it online. And so we are literally at the cutting edge of providing this kind of information. Our data system, the one that I inherited as your district attorney, is not a data system. It's a case management system that was not created to track data in any way. And there's no legal requirement. Your question assumes that there's a legal requirement that district attorneys provide this information. There is none, quite frankly. As I say, Santa Clara County is the only county that has a data transparency or has a dashboard where people can access that information. The data that we track is both we're creating a system to be able to track it. The infrastructure doesn't exist. For instance, you asked how many people are diverted. When I asked that question of our collaborative courts, the supervisor of the courts, he told me in 2022 there was no count. He could not tell me how many people were diverted in 2022 because that information was not counted. And so that's the way the system was set up. It's an older system that came online. There was a very old system, then it came an upgrade was made right before COVID, but it was never set up to track or to count. And so as we've moved forward, we're working with prosecutors, performance indicators. I am attending a data conference in Chicago, I think in October. We hired a data analyst, which is the first time the office has had such a position. And we have our assistant chief of operations and administration is someone that is very deeply familiar with data systems and how to set them up and create the infrastructure. She has about 20 years of doing that. So we're very fortunate that I was able to hire her last year early on in our administration. And she has created a number of partnerships, California Policy Lab out of UC Berkeley, as well as a number of other, as I say, academic institutions that are working on that issue.
So you had noted that these data are not currently available and you're working to upgrade the systems, but some of your press releases have cited this type of data. Where do you in particular access these data if they're not available?
So what Tara Anderson, who is our Assistant Chief of Operations and Administration, has been able to go through a couple of ways. One, the first data that I was able to get, it was a hand count. And it took about 2 weeks for Tara and Christina Molina, who's the director of our Victim Witness Advocates, to literally do a hand count to try to figure out, okay, how many felonies are there? And so they were able to do that at that time because they knew there was no the system wasn't reliable. Christina Molina keeps data for the state of California. But that's on victim services. So we have very good data on that. And I've reported on that because our victim services division is funded by the state of California. And we do quarterly reports and annual reports. We have very good information about the number of victims that we serve, the number of services that are provided, how much money we actually pay out in terms of compensation. So those are the kinds of numbers that I felt very comfortable with because I know that data is, they are able to cross-check it through a number of their systems. But in terms of the other kind of what I think people want to know, like how many cases are plea bargains. There's no way for us to know that, or how many cases are charged. It took Kara Anderson, it took her about 4 months to actually get that information, and a lot of hand manipulation of the system, creating new infrastructure through our own ITD. And so we were able to present it. I wanted the data. I gave her a deadline of December. We didn't get it till February, but it's in what we were able to produce is in our annual report, which we provided. I believe we provided to you all.
So you mentioned a previous deadline of December. Do you have a specific deadline for the public availability of these dashboard systems?
No, unfortunately not. When we met with the team that's working on creating the dashboard around May or June, they said, oh, they would be able to give us some stuff over the summer, and the summer's over. So they haven't been able to produce it yet. Tara told me she's thinking it will be January 2025 before we'll get, be able to give some, they will give us status reports as they accomplish different things. But they have been interviewing, they've interviewed all of my executive leadership team. Now they're interviewing the deputies within different divisions to get a better sense of how the office is actually functioning.
All right, thank you. Our next question will go to Remy.
She's mute.
You're muted, Remy.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam District Attorney. My name is Remy.
Good morning.
My question is about the union representing the prosecutors in your office has expressed support for the recall effort. If the recall fails, what steps will you take to address the concerns raised by the union and then to reconcile with them?
The union raises concerns regularly, so I'm not sure which specific concerns that they kind of shared with you all. They work with us. We have a team that meets with them on a quarterly basis, and they regularly listen to them and figure out what, if anything, we can do with them. Last year, our office negotiated the second contract with them. They are now the second highest paid district attorneys, lawyers who serve as district attorneys in the Bay Area, superseded only by Santa Clara. So they're very well paid. I gave them a merit increase back in March. And recently we were not able to do the merit increase because of the budget, which is now we are experiencing some budget challenges that we're going to have in this fiscal year. So we feel like we're addressing the concerns very much of the union members. What I will say is that we have hired over 40 lawyers. So many of the people who are now union members are people who have joined our office. We have had a pipeline of folks who have come into the office who believe in the vision, who believe that the office can and is being improved, and who are excited to come and work for us. And so we'll continue to hire new people and to be able to provide opportunities for people. One of the things that I've done is to initiate far more comprehensive training than what they've had in the past. We're training them on the Racial Justice Act, which is challenging for many of the folks that have not understood the racial disparities or the racial biases that have taken root in our system. We've also emphasized self-care and wellness, amongst the staff, as well as and trying to ensure that they have a safe and a place to work in. I mean, to the extent that there's a concern that I'm creating a hostile work environment, I have been an advocate for workers and creating safe work environments for people and suing employers to make sure that discrimination and retaliation is not part of the workplace for the last 30 plus years. So I can assure you that I will continue along the lines that I have been all of my legal career, and that our commitment is in fact to support all of our employees, that we have 5 unions in our office and we meet with all of them and we're working with all of them. So hopefully the prosecutors will start to feel better about the situation. I know the leadership is very dissatisfied that their candidate lost, and hopefully they'll get over it sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Madam District Attorney. Thanks for spending time with us this morning. I'm Richard. So it was reported last month in the Berkeley Scanner, there was this discrepancy between your office and the California Highway Patrol regarding the number of arrests that the Highway Patrol was making locally and the types of crimes involved. You know, the CHP had said they'd referred 500 arrests, and your office indicated you'd received 11 cases. So I'm wondering if you could clarify the difference between these figures.
Sure. Yeah. Again, our Director of Administration, Assistant Chief Tara Anderson of Administration and Operations, looked at what they were saying and what we had. And yes, we found that they have 500 cases that are not surge cases. So what our conversation was about the surge cases, because when I met with the CHP commissioner in I believe it was January and maybe even December, and he indicated that the governor might be interested in having some National Guard lawyers work with us. And of course, we said yes. And so what we understood from the CHP was that we were going to, and certainly from the governor's office, was that if the surge in February was going to generate surge cases. And so ultimately what we identified as surge cases, what they identified to us as surge cases was 11 cases. When we went back and looked at the 500 cases, the CHP acknowledged that includes DUIs, that includes cases all over the county, not just Oakland. And yes, we had over 500 or somewhere. Our numbers were much closer. Sorry. Our numbers were much closer when you look at the whole universe of cases. So I think we were all having a disconnect in terms of what the conversation was about. Is it about surge, or is it about DUI? Is it about Oakland, or is it about Alameda County? And so what we found, what they were reporting was the whole universe of cases. So that's the reason, I think, for the discrepancy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna take a minute and shut this phone off because everybody wants to call me this morning. I apologize. I can't get. Okay, go ahead.
Richard, did you have something else?
No, I think on to Chris.
All right, sure. Good morning.
morning.
There have been reports about selective press access in your office, including limited access for the Berkeley Scanner, and concerns about potential cover-ups of public records by your former spokesperson. Could you provide your perspective on these issues and explain your office's approach to press access and public records transparency?
Sure. I mean, I can't speak on the litigation by the former press person. That's being handled by the county and is in litigation. And it's also a personnel matter, so I can't talk about that. In terms of press access, we have a media access moment every Wednesday. Usually it's Wednesday afternoon. If there are issues that we want to share with the public, we invite the media to my office every Wednesday, and most media people do come. I am a firm believer in the First Amendment. I've litigated First Amendment issues successfully, against the County of Alameda, believe it or not. I have a published opinion called Davis versus Pacific PHS and the County of Alameda. And my client was awarded damages to vindicate her First Amendment right, as well as against the state of California, a seminal case that I litigated all the way to the United States Supreme Court. It's called Freetag versus Ayers. And so you can look it up. I have been litigating and protecting and defending the First Amendment rights and the rights of workers to exercise their First Amendment rights for most of my legal career. So I am a firm believer in the First Amendment, and any interpretation that somehow we would violate, I would lead an organization that would violate the First Amendment is inaccurate. And there was an oversight through the process. We had a number of communication directors, including the one who left. And our communication department needed some assistance, but in that process there was some oversight that a couple of the news outlets, including I think the Berkeley person and there was another Bay City News, I think a number of major news outlets were removed from the list, and when they got back on the list, they've had access to come, and they do come. And then in terms of the public records requests, those are handled by a team, which has always been, my understanding, that's always been the practice of the office, and it continues to be the practice. We have multiple paralegals who receive Public Records Act requests and a team of lawyers that look at them, and they disclose them as they are able.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess I should say I have no direct involvement. I approve whatever their requests are. I've never denied a Public Records Act request, and I don't participate in the process. I have no participation in the process.
Appreciate that clarification.
Yeah.
I'll move on to the next question. And my name's Heidi Goldstein. It's nice to have you here, and thank you for joining us.
Of course.
This is a question about hiring practices, and specifically regarding the appointment of your partner, Antoine, and Otis Bruce, who had previously been investigated for workplace misconduct in Marin. So can you give us some details about your office's hiring practices for these positions?
Well, the hiring practices for positions for executive leaders are different from the hiring practices for line staff. Let me be clear about that. The hiring practice for me in December of 2023, when we were onboarding my executive leadership team, was that we had a transition committee that was formed in late November. We had subcommittees that addressed my public safety. So there was hiring for inspectors, there was hiring for the Consumer Justice Bureau and for the Prosecution Bureau and for the additional units that we knew we were going to have. So with respect to Mr. Clord, because we understand that resentencing and reentry need to go together, he was hired, recommended by the transition team, and we hired him to lead our reentry unit. Mr. Bruce was hired because of, obviously, as his experience, he was not under investigation, to my knowledge, in December or January of 2023 when we onboarded the executive leadership team. So that process was a recruitment process that took place in December of 2023, and I onboarded the executive leadership team with 11 members, which included a mental health clinician, program managers, lawyers, and a great executive team. And I'm very proud of the work and an advocate. Christina Molina came in the door with me as well, and she now heads up our victim witness advocate. We actually had 2 advocates. So I'm very proud of the team that came in the door with me and that has done an excellent job, because we did a transition, but my predecessor did not. So we walked into the office with very little information. I received reports about the different units within the office, and there are many. I got those reports. Those were made available to Mr. Bruce on December 29th, literally 3 days before we took office. And we learned later that those reports had been prepared, but withheld for whatever reason. So there was a conscious effort to ensure that there would be no transition internally. And notwithstanding that, our team has done a great job. Mr. Bruce is no longer with us, but he served us very well, organizing the attorneys and the hiring process. Now, we found one person in the HR department. Our county has since 1925, when the charter came into effect. The DA's employees have all been, they're not civil service employees. They're not part of the county civil service. The charter specifically provides that district attorney employees are at will, so that our hiring practices were developed over time. And I presume each administration had its own hiring practices. Our administration found no guidelines, no program, no protocol. So we've been building that out. We hired a director of recruitment and retention, and we started a process of advertising positions through social media and LinkedIn. We've done some recruitment through the bar associations. We've all been tasked with recruiting, and I say my executive leadership team have all been tasked with recruiting people to come into the office, whether it's lawyers, program managers, paralegals. We started a paralegal partnership program with UC or with Cal State East Bay. We've done recruitment through the local law schools. We have an internship program, part of which was started, existed when we got there, and lawyers post-bar through the internship program. Traditionally, the office has then hired people as lawyers once they pass the bar. We've continued that and expanded it. And this summer, we had our second class of Drum Majors for Justice, which included law students, college students, and for the first time, high school students.
Great, thank you for that. Just as a follow-up, what the things that you've clarified is many of the folks in your office are hired under a civil service protocol, which is fairly rigid and very transparent.
No, none of them are. Never. They've never been. Never.
Absolutely
never.
Never.
Okay. Since 1925. None of
Got
them
it.
have.
Okay.
They meet no civil service requirements, nor have they ever been required to.
Then they are all at will. This includes people like secretaries, paralegals, etc. Okay, so everybody is at will.
Absolutely.
I think the follow-up question then is in hiring this director of recruitment and retention, who it sounds like is building out some of your processes. Can you just give us an idea of kind of what has come to the fore in terms of things that demonstrate transparency or competitiveness of process?
I'm not sure if I understand what I don't understand.
Sure,
I'm sorry.
Sure. What you described was coming into an office that really didn't have, any clearly articulated processes with respect to hiring. And
yeah, they had their practices and what they did. So, people have focused on my hiring of my partner. When I walked into the office, my predecessor had her sister, her sister-in-law, and her sister still works for me. Her brother, two of her nieces and her nephew. John Meehan's son works for me. He's worked for the office for 40 years. So it's been there were practices, but they weren't written, I guess I would say that. Yeah.
Right. And of course, the problem of hiring family members, is a well-known concern.
It was not a problem or a concern before I took this office, apparently. And I have not fired Jake O'Malley or Colleen Clark or her sister, Miss O'Malley's sister, is actually one of our hardest working paralegals. So I'm not sure who has identified the problem, but we have not.
Right. And I get that. And, the good news is the O'Malleys are not related to you.
Well, the good news is that they're good workers. And that's why they kept their job. I mean, they're doing their job, which is what they're supposed to do.
then I think really what the question is, given that you are working on building more articulated processes, and that, critics have come forward, just about transparency and competitiveness, what has landed with you, or what has stuck with you in terms of making sure that those sorts of things are embedded in the processes that you're building?
So I am not the person that's responsible for that. I have delegated that to Chief Assistant Royal Roberts, who supervises HR, IT, administration, among a number of things. So that is his responsibility. Our intern program has been built out by Senior Assistant District Attorney Cynthia Chandler in collaboration with her team. She had an assistant who was helping her, as well as once we onboarded the director of retention and recruitment. So they have been the ones that have laid they've been ones that have developed job descriptions, that have developed whether or not, particularly around the internships, because there is a level of competitiveness because lots of people want to come intern in our office. And so they have created the screening mechanisms for that. And I'm not privy to that. That would be something that I would have to get back from them for you, well, like what their criteria are. For the lawyers, every lawyer at least that we have hired has to pass a live scan. And so we try to look at what we make sure that they have meet a minimum standard of making sure they don't have a criminal background, and that, we look at what their qualifications are. I think that my team is very adept. Mr. Chief Assistant Roberts was the general counsel for the Peralta Community College districts. So he is very adept at identifying good candidates, and my chief of inspectors, who we've also hired 16 inspectors. They know what they're looking for, and they define what their criteria is. And I can certainly ask them for that, but that's not something that I'm involved in on a day-to-day basis. And I'm certainly not shaping that for them.
Got it. Okay. No,
Yeah.
appreciate the answer. Nancy, over to you.
Oh, actually.
Oh, no, I think Eric wants to have a question.
So just one more question before we allow the Madam Price to close. And again, we just really want to thank you for being here this morning/afternoon. So Eric, and go to Nancy. Thank you once again.
Madam District Attorney, a former spokesperson has accused your office of anti-Asian bias, including explicit anti-Asian comments. Given Alameda County's large AAPI population, how do you reassure voters that your office is free of such biases? And what specific steps will you take to ensure your office supports and treats all staff equitably?
Again, I can't comment on her specific allegations, except to say that I am not a person who engages in that kind of atrocious behavior, nor would I tolerate that type of open racism in the office, where someone is walking through our office or making comments against anyone based on their race. Certainly, having an Asian background is not a stigma in this country, nor has it been, just as being Black. Well, being Black in this country does have a stigma, but I can assure you that, having been an advocate for racial equality all of my life, since Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, that has been my life's work. And so it's not anything that I would support. Again, I've made my living challenging employers for hostile work environments and for race discrimination. That's been my life's work. And so we continue that. The leader sets the tone of the organization. And I can assure you that we are not having discriminatory racism prevalent in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office under my leadership. And so that's where the voters should be assured. Do your research, do the facts. How many cases have I done representing AAPI litigants. And I can tell you, if you look, you'll see that I have done that as part of my work, whether it's linguistic justice for Vietnamese residents, whether it's anti-hate litigation. My office was located near Chinatown, on the edge of Chinatown, and I'm very familiar with Oakland's Chinatown and have great allies in Chinatown who have spoken out on my behalf and who regularly host me at different events. I participate in all sorts of events in Oakland's Chinatown, as well as the Hindu community, which is also part of our AAPI community, as well as the Thai community, which we host in Alameda County. We host some of the largest Buddhist monks and Thai communities, worship houses of worship for the Thai community in the country. And I have been welcomed there more than on multiple occasions. And so I think that the residents should do their research and talk to people in the AAPI community who know me well and who are, in fact, supporting me in this position and have supported me as an attorney over many, many years. We recently were endorsed by the Asian Pacific Island Alliance of Laborers, Laborers Alliance, APALA, which is a division of the AFL-CIO. So we're continuing to enjoy broad support across the AAPI community. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hello. Thank you, Madam District Attorney. Now we would like to invite you to give a 2-minute close.
Oh, sure. Okay. Thank you. I guess I wasn't prepared for this because I'm not really a candidate. What is on the ballot before the residents of Alameda County is something that is very, very destructive and divisive to our democracy. And this is a season where we need to be united in defending our democracy. The right-wing Republican MAGA movement has been dying to get a foothold in Alameda County for years. And unfortunately, through this effort to overturn the November election, this is the way in which they hope to do it. The Republican Party has ordained this effort. It is not a grassroots effort. It's funded primarily by wealthy billionaires that do not have an interest in public safety or in our community, really. Because if they did, they would be using their billions of dollars to help fund our schools and pay our teachers and house our homeless and help us to address our mental health crisis that we have in Alameda County, that we see every day in our criminal justice system. When I came into the office, we had 2 lawyers staffing our collaborative courts, and that's where people with mental illnesses and mental health issues are addressed in the criminal justice system. And we had 14 courts, of which 12 of them require a mental health diagnosis and only 2 lawyers staffing it and no mental health clinician. And so I changed that almost immediately. A member of my executive leadership team was a mental health clinician, and I assigned her initially to go through the office and help the employees, and then she was resident in the collaborative courts program. She's left us, but we now have 2 mental health case managers there. We have 6 lawyers instead of just 2 lawyers. The court is very, very pleased with our partnership. They've expanded the drug courts, which gives people suffering from addiction an opportunity to get services versus ending up in Santa Rita County Jail or on the street or engaging in criminal activity. These are the concrete things that we have done to improve public safety that those who started attacking us in February have no clue about and certainly have not spoken to the public about. I urge you to read the 2023 annual report, which shows the amazing things that we were able to do with literally no transition. And the infrastructure inside the office was essentially had disintegrated. And whether it was COVID or just mismanagement, we've done a great job of moving the county forward and moving that office forward. And the voters should really, really support us and help us to continue to move forward instead of going backward. If we have an appointed district attorney, if this recall is successful, we'll have an appointed DA, which the people will have had no voice in selecting. And that person will then have to try to figure out, how do you move the office forward? The same work that we're doing, hopefully they will encounter, but they'll be 2 years behind us. And then they will have to run for election in 2026, which is disruptive. And then we'll start over again in 2026, and then we'll have another election in 2028, and then we'll have to start over again. And the people of Alameda County deserve better than the vision or the lack of vision by those who have initiated and are advancing this recall effort, because we do have a vision to move forward. It is a vision of equity. It is a vision of transparency. We are moving towards those things, but change takes time. And it takes time, and people should give us the time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Price. We appreciate you being here and spending a significant amount of time with us. So thank you.
All right then. Thank you.
great
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay. Bye-bye.